In this video, we are going to talk about three functions in the DAX world, which are the first one is the row function, and then value function, and then values function. Let's first cover the row function, then we cover the value, and then we cover the values function. So row function is actually it's a table manipulation functions family in the DAX world. It's always written the single row table with single column or specified many columns from any dimension table or measure table. It's always generate the behavior of this row, always generate the single row in the results window. And this can be used as a parameters to your application. I mean, whatever the single row that we get from the row function, so you can use those values as a inputs to your application and make your work more simple. Let's get into the examples. Um, so what are the scenarios that we can use the row function? The first here, I simply wrote the basic select column statement using the evaluate. Usually, so we fetch the data by selecting the specified columns under the select columns. But if I use the same columns in my row function, it will throw. Okay, so since it's a fetched, because these measures are actually, so calculated members in my tabular cube. So always it will get automatically aggregated based on our selection. That's the reason we got the results for these two measures. One is the internet total sales and internet total tax amount with row function. However, if I use the same query, let me put it in the same query in the new row, and then if I change this to row, then it will throw an error because whatever we are trying to fetch in here, the detailed information from the internet sales fact table. So that's the reason this function is unable to fetch the records. So always, if you have a detailed information in your dimension table or fact table, make sure that we use the aggregated functions for those measures to bring the single row. So it's always at any point it will fetch only the single row information from the table or dimension table or a fact table. So the main purpose, most of the time we use this row function in our aggregated along with our aggregated functions, like to populate the count of rows, distinct count of rows and all. Okay, in case if you like to uh, submit of any specific table column from this, let's say this is the internet sales and I would like to bring the sales amount, sum of the sales amount and display under the single row. Okay, so you can see here, but if you notice this query, without using the sum, it's fetched the data because these are the calculated members within the tabular cube and they will be aggregated by default. I mean, so these calculated members we created during the deployment of the tabular cube. That's the difference. And moving on, so we can use the row function along with our calculate function. So where we can filter the data. So for example, I have the internet sales amount where I'm taking the sum of that information. And the second measure, what I'm doing, I'm taking the sales amount, but this time I'm taking only for the 2013. And now if I execute this statement by using the calculate, so you can see the results. So the first column is displaying the total sales amount from the internet sales, and this total sales 2 column refers only the sales amount which is belongs to the fiscal year 2013. Not only that, so we can use the row function along with calculate table function. So In the same scenario, the same previous query, what I did, I just extended further where I filter out the data for the product category wherever my product category name equals to bikes. So this row function again fetches the single row values you can see here. So don't worry about calculate table and calculate. I will cover it in the different function. But as of now, I used in these examples along with row function to have a better explanation. Moving on, define. So you can use the row function uh, along with the define measures. So here are what I did. So I defined the two measures where I did the created the two measures row measure 1, row measure 2, and so I aggregated my internet sales amount and then multiplied with zero point 0.5 and this did the same thing for the tax amount. Now I just call those measures in my row function. Again, it will bring only the single row you can see here. And same way, you can use the uh, row function even in the variables to just call out the any filters or anything. So you can use that row function along with your variables. And then last example is again, so I here I use the variable as well as I use the calculate. So where what I did here, first I sum it up my internet sales and then multiplied with zero point 0.5, and this operation, this expression, whatever I wrote here, this expression applied to only my bikes category. So wherever the bikes categories values are there, that's where it will take sales amount and multiply with zero point 0.5. Then we are storing that value under variable, and then again if I execute this, then I will get the single row value. So this is about our row function, how to use and which are the scenarios that you can use. And then so these are the examples that we talked about. Let's move on to the values. That is our next topic, right? So value function again, it's just like a convert function, right? So basically it converts the any integer values in text will be converted to the number in the DAX queries. Okay, so as you know that, right? So in the text column, we can store both the characters and integer values, right? Some places will have integer values in the text column. Those scenarios, if you want to take the text number, like specified 567 is your integer value, but it's stored in the text column, right? And you want to convert to the number, so those places we use the value function. I mean, the behavior of this value function is more or less like a cast and convert function in our MS SQL server. So usually we don't use this function while we're writing the DAX query much because the DAX has the intelligence to convert any number formatted values in text to numbers. I mean, whenever it's required, it will convert it automatically. So using this function, you can convert any text values to the integer or float or date time or timestamps. So I just captured some examples here. So here is the query that I wrote, and you can see here. Uh, so what I'm doing here, first thing, so first row, I'm just converting the my text number to integer value that you can see here, and even in the next row I just added the float values, and this has been converted to the integer. And third, I use the exponent values. Some places we get exponent values, right? Or you can call it scientific notation. So wherever you have that scientific notation, I converted to the integer value. That will be our third value. And even we can convert the date format. So here I enter the 20 December 2023 and it's converted to the integer value. So now to see whether this integer value is, if I convert back to the date time, let's see whether the integer value works perfectly or not. Okay, so I open the Excel and I copied the integer. So this is the integer value. Now I'll change to short date. Okay, you can see it's changed. So it's 12th December, uh, sorry, 20th December 2023. Okay, so this is how the value function that will be handy while you're writing the DAX queries to convert any values, especially the value function. More we use it wherever we have parameterization, right? So some application from front end we capture the variable and then we pass to the DAX query, right? During that time, so this value function will be handy to convert the text values to number or dates and all. Okay, so that's about value function. Moving on. So next one is the values function. Basically, again, the values function is it's a part of the table manipulation functions in the DAX. So this values function will take the two types of inputs. One is the single column from any dimension or any measures, or it will also take the uh, table as a input. Okay, so when we pass the single column to this function, what will happen? It will fetch the distinct values by excluding the duplicate values. But the beauty is you can also fetch the blank rows as a part of your result set. Um, but if you compare with this values function with your distinct, so usually whenever you pass the single column to your values function, the values function and distinct function works in same way. But when we pass the table as the input to the values function, which includes the which includes all duplicated records and all your blank values. Okay, and then so the other difference between the distinct and values, the distinct function can works on any dimension, any attributes. There is no criteria to have the proper relationship between the dimension or measure that we used in the distinct, but values function will only works with the dimension and measure tables which are having the relationship. Okay, the side effect with values function. So sometimes we might get referential integrity issues because of these, including the blank rows, and then wherever you have one to many relationships, those scenarios, there is a chance of we getting the referral integrity issues. So, so we need to do the data quality check more when we use the values function compared with the distinct. So the syntax of the distinct function is so values of, and then either it will take the table name or column name. So now let's execute one example. So here I wrote one small statement using the product and the product subcategory ID. I'm trying to fetch the information. Okay, so here I got the list of all my product subcategory from this dimension. Now what I did, just I sorted the data. So now it's sorted from smallest to largest. Now if you look at the same thing in the distinct, again it will fetch the same rows by having the distinct values, right? And then if you look at the count of these two queries, I use the echo statement so that I can print the results in the same time. Now you can see here we have 38 rows fetched in the first query where we use the values function, and I'm trying to get the count of rows of the subcategory IDs. I got 38, and the same thing I did for the second query using the distinct, and this time also I got the 38 rows. Now if I do summarize this data product dimension by using the values and distinct, here are my results. So the distinct will actually, since we passed the column name, so it fetched the what are the distinct values for this reorder point, that level it bought it, and then values it fetched the um, all the count of rows irrespective of the blank. So this count of the rows between the product and count of rows using the values function is the same. Now if I write again, change this query, and then I didn't bring evaluate. Okay, so now let me add the product category here in the values function. Then this time my distinct values and my values function values will be the same. Okay, you can see here the results are the same between the two columns. So this is about the values function, and that's all for now, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.